Hey everybody, glad to be here, despite the times. My name is Cedrick Frazier, Representative Cedrick Frazier, District 43A, which is the cities of Crystal and New Hope. And in just a bit, what I want to ground my comments in is this, because every time we have this moment, I am transported back to my youth. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, my family by way of Mississippi. And when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, gun violence was prevalent in my community. There was rarely a day that went by as I got older that I didn't hear gunfire in my community. It's rarely a day that there wasn't fear of going to the park, getting on public transportation, and just praying and hoping that I got back home safely. That my mother got home safely, that my siblings got home safely, that my cousins got home safely, that my uncles and aunts got home safely. When I was in high school, after multiple incidents where I survived gun violence, I joined an organization called Hands Without Guns. This is when I was in high school. In that organization, our role was, this was young students from around the city. We would go around, we would attend rallies just like this in communities like the one I grew up in, all over the city, when there was gun violence and when someone lost their lives. We would attend those rallies and we would ask our elected officials, we would ask our community members, do something. Do something. Do something so we don't have to keep attending these rallies. Do something so you don't have to continue to hear kids come to you and say, stop this. We don't have to live like this. And I ground my comments in that because I want to tell all the young people here, those that are still standing here and those that have spoken, I have been exactly where you are so many times. So many times. And the reason I ran for office to come into this building was for the sole purpose to make sure that we don't have to keep having these rallies. And I'll tell you, the thing that pisses me off the most is when we have gun violence. And we get to the point where we're calling on elected officials and we're calling on someone to do something different, to ensure that our kids don't keep dying in places that they shouldn't have to think about violence at all. Is when I hear someone come out and say, this is not the time to talk about gun rights. This is not the time to talk about doing something different. This is not the time to infringe upon someone's rights. When will be the time if the time isn't when our kids are dying in these streets? And no, that is an explicit, real question to any of my elected officials that I hear saying this on the other side of the aisle, and I've heard them say it during this moment. That is the real question. When is the time? When is the time? When is the time? I heard you loud and clear. My Democratic colleagues that are here hear you loud and clear. We have introduced legislation to ban weapons of war from being on our streets. We've introduced it, that's the first step. The next step is to have our colleagues on the other side of the aisle come out and say, we need to move that legislation and get it passed into law. I will commit to that. My Democratic colleagues that stand with me today, we will commit to continuing to push forward legislation that will save lives for our kids, no matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter what school you're in. Anytime lives are lost, that is a failure on us, and we have to own that, and we do own that. And I'm going to close with this because I appreciate all the time that everyone has spent coming out on this day when you could be doing anything else. But we have to talk about these tragedies too many times. Right after the tragedies and the shootings, so many shootings in less than 24 hours, I had to take my daughter to an open house. going to be her first year in middle school. And instead of adulation and excitement, and a little bit of anxiety because it's going to be the first time for her, what I mainly had to think about was, is this place going to protect my child? Am I ever going to get a call that I'm going to have to rush away from wherever I am to run to ensure and see if my child is okay and if her peers are okay? And when I got home that night, all I could think about was how terrible it is that any parent has to think about that. And how terrible of a society and culture that we live in, that we put more energy into protecting these weapons and ensuring that these weapons can be on the street than we do in protecting the lives of our kids. That is not who I believe we are. That is not who I believe we are. And I promise you this, as long as I am in this place and I have an election certificate to be in this place, I will risk that election certificate every single day to ensure that we protect our kids. And my only closing question is to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I want you to risk your election certificates with me to save our kids. Thank you all.